talk a little bit about how the changes made to security procedures and safety procedures in the wake of the Hassan shooting informed your response to today's incident?
Well, I think the response from the law enforcement and the medical folks displayed clear lessons learned from the previous case, and I think that it was obvious that the response was swift and it was appropriate, both from a law enforcement perspective and from a medical perspective. Last question.
Sir, you mentioned that the suspect had bought the weapon a couple days before. How much indication do you have of premeditation here? Was there anything tied to the timing of it? Was there something going on at this building?
I do not know, and that'll be part of the investigation. Don't know any idea about the premeditation.
General, I do want to follow up with a question.
Last question, go ahead.
Considering that he did have a weapon that was not registered, he carried it on base. Are you considering changing the protocol or practices of how you can check a vehicle as it's approaching base, considering this just happened?
I will be reviewing all of those procedures. That's correct.
General, if you tried to
So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Also appreciate your support. We will hold a regular press conference daily until we get all of the information out into the public that we have. It's appropriate. I don't have a time for that, but the first one obviously will be tomorrow. And Colonel Chris Garver, our public affairs officer, will put that out. And I just ask for all your thoughts and prayers for the fallen and for the wounded in this particular case. Thank you very much.
General, I know an old colleague.
All right, that is a press conference being held there by Lieutenant General Mark A. Milley. He is the commanding officer at Fort Hood, Texas, telling us about the person who opened fire, saying it happened in the medical area, got into a car, and then got out, started shooting at two different places, was eventually taken down by a female member of the military. We are being told by the commander there that he had behavioral health and mental health issues. He was being treated for that, but not being treated for post-traumatic stress disorder. According to the general, he opened fire with a .45 caliber semi-automatic Smith & Wesson. When he was engaged by the female officer, he pulled it from under his jacket and shot himself. That is according to the military commander.
This is CNN Breaking News.
I'm Don Lemon. It is the top of the hour, 11 p.m. Eastern here in the United States. I want to welcome our viewers, of course, in the United States and around the world. We are following the breaking news out of Fort Hood, Texas, where several people have been killed and also injured. We are told that there are 3 victims, plus the shooter, are dead. And then there are at least 16 injuries, people who are being treated at the hospital now. We're told that a member of the military opened fire 4 p.m. local time using his own .45 caliber semi-automatic gun on the military installation. Opened fire, shooting people, getting into a car, going to another location, and then shooting again, eventually being engaged by another member of the military, but then this man took his own life, according to a press conference that just happened a short time ago live here on CNN. Also, according to that press conference, this man served in Iraq in 2011, supposedly 4 months. When he came back, he reported having trouble, and he was being treated for that, being treated for behavioral health and mental health issues, but not PTSD, not post-traumatic stress disorder. Guiding me through this, I want to go straight to Spider Marks, who is a general, and you can talk about what the commanding officer talked about. You walked us through what would happen at this press conference, and that's exactly what happened. What do you make of what happened on this military installation at Fort Hood, and also talking about the mental health issues that this man was being treated for?
Yeah, the key point that General Milley pointed out is that he was being diagnosed or he was being treated for behavioral health issues. And when you walk down the path, you go through a certain PERT diagram, you end up with PTSD as one of those potential options. So he hadn't, the diagnosis had not reached that point, and that was not necessarily an inevitable outcome that this soldier suffered from PTSD. But it could have been a result of his experiences and where he was in his current status, in terms of his medical status.
Mm-hmm. So here, let's go through this, okay? And I'm going to bring in not only General Marks, but Evan Perez, who is our justice correspondent, also Bill Gavin, who is a former FBI member of the New York office, and also Javier Amador, who treated Nadal Hassan, who also killed people at Fort Hood back in 2009. Let's go through it here. The general came out and said he wanted to give his condolences to the soldiers. He said this happened at 4 p.m., someone firing shots near the medical area, and then within 15 minutes, the military responded and engaged the shooter. The shooter died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He doesn't believe at this point that it's related to terrorism, but he is not ruling it out. He is saying the ATF, federally, is involved, the FBI, and on a local level, the Texas Rangers, the Texas State Police, and also local law enforcement. 3 victims, he said, were killed in this shooting, plus the shooter, 16 being treated at local hospitals, and they are focusing now on the families of the killed and injured. The FBI and other law enforcement, they're being asked to be called if you have any other information. The people who live on this base and who work on this base have been dealing with Iraq and Afghanistan for the last 13 years, General, and they need to feel safe at home, as the president said. They are not feeling safe at home, I would imagine now, and now all over the country, if not the world, they will be examining security measures on military bases because of this.
They will, absolutely. There will be a very, very in-depth review of what took place, and it will promulgate across the force, not just the Army, but all the services, and all federal agencies certainly as well. And these new, what was identified as the potential concerns may not be new. We may, in fact, be reinforcing what we're already doing. In this particular case, it might have been aberrant. It might have been a very simple event where he had a weapon, shoved it under the seat of his car, drove on post.
That's what I was going to ask you.
Nobody was the wiser.
The general said that you should not be allowed to carry concealed weapons on a base. How do you get a concealed weapon on a base?
Just as I described, you bring it on the post. You're authorized to have a personally owned weapon if it's registered on post. So you've got to go through the procedure to make sure that
Stand by, General. I need to get in because we need to go to Scott and White Memorial Hospital for a news conference going on now. Let's listen.
We're on Dave Scott Live Shot right now.
Good evening. We ready to start? Good evening. I'm Glenn Couchman. I'm the Chief Medical Officer at Scott and White Memorial Hospital.
We're seeing a press conference now at the hospital where a number of the injured were taken, and the doctors there are giving us an update. We've just heard from the commanding officer at Fort Hood just a short time ago, telling us that at least 16 victims were being treated at local hospitals, 3 victims killed, plus the shooter. And the doctors there are giving us an update. And if we can, we're having a bit of a trouble.
The authorities at Fort Hood
technical issues.
Began accepting patients coming over from the fort. First, I'd like to extend my condolences to the victims and their families tonight. We know there's been a lot of people suffering with physical injuries and the emotional trauma of what has been going on. So far, we've accepted 9 patients who have been sent over from the fort. We have 8 of them are currently in our facility right now receiving care, and there's still 1 more who should be arriving shortly. So this situation appears to be, at this point, pretty well contained, and that's the extent of the folks that we are anticipating getting in our facilities for further care. All of these patients are in our ICU or will be there very shortly. 3 are in critical condition, and the remaining are all seriously injured. We have 7 male patients and 1 female patient with us. Our supplies, we feel like we are adequately covered in that regard, and we're providing attention to the families, trying to give them as much support as they need to help them through this. And we've had a lot of our volunteer staff come in to help us through this, and at this point the patients are doing as well as can be expected for the severity of the injuries that they have sustained. So with that, we will take questions and see if we can't give you some more information.
Could you talk specifically about some of those injuries you're seeing?
Yeah, let me ask my colleagues to address some of those for us.
So I'll be happy to address that. We have seen a variety of injuries ranging from mild and superficial to life-threatening. These have been involving extremities to neck, chest, and abdomen. I won't go into too many specifics about individual patients, but we've seen several different types of injuries this evening.
Have they all needed surgery at this point, and have they gone through surgery at this point?
There have been 2 that have undergone surgery here at Scott and White, and both, one of them is out of the OR and is in the ICU in critical condition. The other one is just finishing in the OR.
Have all the patients' families been contacted?
We are not aware of all of that. Some of the patients' names we don't have yet, but we are working with our chaplain service and the Army to make sure that we have identities for everybody. Obviously, some of these young men and women are serving a good distance from home, so we don't have immediate family a lot of the time. But we are working to get that. We have the majority of them. We just don't have all of them yet.
Is it true that they were all soldiers?
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
Are they alert and talking?
Several of them are, yes. 3 of them are currently on the ventilator and so are unable to speak right now.
Those that have been talking, have they said anything that stands out to you?
You know, I think that for the most part, it reminds me a little bit of the way the way the soldiers have been in the past, when we've taken care of them on a routine basis, as well as when we took care of them in 2009. They're resilient, and they're always a very positive group of people to be around, and it's always an honor to take care of them.
You were one of the doctors here in 2009?
Yes.
Reflect on today, having been here then.
Well, we've thought about that a lot over the course of this evening, and you know, I was very proud of the way this hospital handled that in 2009. You know, I think it shows really the community we have here and the culture we have at Scott and White. I will say that we have continued over the course of the last few years to engage our partners at Tarnell and across the region to make sure that we are always continuously improving our response to emergency and to disasters such as this. And I feel like those efforts this evening have paid off with huge dividends.
How did the hospital get ready for the patients that were coming in? What did you do?
Well, you want me to address that one again? I think that there's a tremendous amount of human resources that go into that, and we have a very well-coordinated command center that we utilize whenever we have incidents like this, and that was activated again tonight. There are a certain core group of people that come in to help man that every single time that is activated. Then we call in certain core people. And then, of course, we also have just the good people that work here who are interested in helping, volunteering their time, coming in from home, giving me phone calls and asking if I need anything. I know that Glenn and Harry have gotten the same request as well. So the community as well as the staff here at Scott and White have been extremely generous in their showing.
You said people are asking you if you need anything. Is there anything you need from the community?
You know, I think at this point, from a hospital resource perspective, we're doing fine. We don't have any need for any ongoing blood for this specific event. I would always encourage the community to donate because you never know when these kind of situations can occur, and we are always looking for healthy donors. In terms of other community support, I think that we'll see over the coming days what we need in terms of families and in terms of the support for the soldiers who have been affected by this.
You had talked about there are 2 have been through surgery. The other ones that are in place here, do you anticipate those eventually going into surgery?
There are a couple that are still under evaluation. At this time, I can't comment on those. The remainder of them appear that they will not need surgery.
You said 3 were in critical. Does that mean that 6 are in serious or 5 are in serious?
Let me make sure I don't mess up my math here. 3 are definitely in critical, and then we have the remaining, the 5 that are here I would classify as serious. We'll probably consider downgrading them into fair in the overnight period, or upgrading them, I guess would be the correct term, to a better condition.
The one on the way, do we know anything about that patient?
I have been told that it may be a facial injury, but I don't have any more information than that.
Did the hospital call in any extra doctors?
You know, to be honest, we really didn't have to. This happened kind of at the end of our normal business day, and so we actually had a fair number of staff in place. We were fortunate on the timing with regards to that. We definitely had a large number of doctors who contacted us to make sure that we had the staffing needs that this challenge presented. We obviously are a training facility, and we had multiple trainees that were available to help as well. And we did have a few key individuals come in from home. Specifically, I mentioned the command center, and some of those folks came in from outside to make sure they were here.
Yeah, people were calling the command center immediately, and so we had ample staff. We had a large number of folks that chose to stay through the evening hours. Many of them just to kind of be extra hands on deck if needed. But we were amply staffed from the moment the first patient arrived.
And in addition to doctors, it was the nurses in the OR staff, the anesthesiologist. I mean, it was a very impressive group that rose to the occasion.
Did most have multiple gunshot wounds?
I would say the majority of them suffered from what appears to be single gunshot wounds.